of the other pastors prayed with me, shared with me about the life and death and resurrection of Jesus, shared with me about sin, shared with me about being disconnected from God, and that thing that was missing was God, but that thing that I felt when I came in was peace. And I went, that's it. Like, I'd felt love before, I'd felt anger before, I'd felt fear before, I'd felt kind of calm before, but I'd never, ever in my whole entire life felt peace. And I went, well, if Jesus is the one who's giving me that, I want more. I want to know him. So that was in the 1st of December 2013. And from that day on, things just shifted, things just changed. One of the biggest things that changed was that desire or that addiction for the adrenaline and violence kind of went. Like, I can honestly say to this public forum, since the day that I gave my life to Jesus, I've never been in one fight since. I've never been involved in a gang fight since. I've never been attacked since. I've never been in a fist fight since. There's been situations that have arisen where, if it had happened before, I knew how they were going to go. But for one way or another, something changed. And one of the testimonies of that was one of the guys who stabbed me. A few months after I became a Christian, I was at a Holy Communion for my friend's daughter, and he was there. And so they kind of heard stories that Andy Brady had been going to church and had changed, but this was the first time since the incident that we were actually in the same room and face to face. And I knew he was going to be there. But I knew in my heart, I wanted to go make amends. So I approached the table. There was him, two of his brothers and his friends. And I put my hand over to him. And as I put my hand over to them, they all put their hands on the bottles because they thought something was about to happen. And I just shared with them, I was like, I hold no animosity towards you now. I don't want to fight with you. I have no hate towards you. I'd rather just put it to an end now. And I shook his hand in front of his brothers and his friends. And given that one of the brothers that was there, I'd actually put in hospital. So that shows you the kind of tension that was there. But I could never catch him, but I caught his brother, and he ended up in hospital after an altercation with me. But even there, we all shook hands, and that could only happen because of what God was doing in my life. I can only describe that as God's grace, that I was able to be in a situation with people who had stabbed me, and the stab wasn't just a flesh when they stabbed me, and it was 2 inches from my spine. I managed to get away with just 9 stitches and no serious damage. So that was very early on in my life with Jesus. But from then, like, my desire for drinking and drugs and partying just started to change. And over the course of that year, it just had gone. The desire for drugs had gone by the end of the year. And I had good pastors around me. I had good people around me. I kind of went to that church thinking I don't need to make new friends. I've already got friends. But actually, God put people in my life who are still there to this day. And I found that I have friends who pray for me and friends who I can be honest with, and they won't judge me. They won't think ill of me. They'll actually be there for me. They'll tell me the truth, but they'll still love me. And that is something that is just amazing to have. But after that first year, I said to my pastor, look, I don't want to have one foot in the world and one foot in church. Like, if I'm going to be a Christian, I'm going to be serious about it. So if God's got plans for me, then I need discipled into those plans. So I want you to start pushing me. Now, I don't know to this day if I regret saying that to him, because since that day, he started pushing me. He started putting me into positions where I never ever thought I would be in, giving me responsibilities I never ever thought that I would have. And that led me to doing a HNC in counselling and Christian counselling at a Bible college. And that's what I find quite funny, that I went to church looking for counselling, and less than a year later, I start a course to become a counsellor. That can only be God. That can only be God's grace that can do that. I had no desire whatsoever to be a counsellor, but before then, but now I went over, completed my HNC in counselling, and we'll still hope to follow that. But just things like that, it's like only God could do that. We then, David and I, were part of a team that planted a church in the town in Glasgow, town in South Lanarkshire, just outside of Glasgow. We grew up, called Rutherglen. So we planted a church just off the town centre of where we used to cause chaos. Like, and when I say chaos, I really mean chaos. Like, notorious for violence, notorious for causing mayhem. And there we were in this little hut just outside the train station in the town centre of Rutherglen, planting a church, sharing Jesus to everybody that we would meet out on the streets a couple of times a week, just talking to anybody who would listen about Jesus and what he'd done in our lives. Excuse me. But part of that team that was sent over to plant with us, because we were still very raw. The way that some of our pastors would describe us, we were barely saved. Right? So we were Christians, but we were still very, very rough Glaswegian Christians. So our tongue.
He's coming. Jesus is coming. I can't wait to hear the trumpet call. He's coming. Jesus is coming. And when he comes, we'll crown him Lord of all. And when he comes, we'll crown him Lord of all.
Life Stories. Life Stories Worldwide is brought to you every Monday night at 8 p.m. UK time. We broadcast live on Facebook, Zoom and YouTube. So why not join us every Monday night at 8 p.m. UK time.
Still hadn't been sanctified at that point. Our methods were probably not too orthodox of the way that we would approach people and speak to people. They sent a team of about 9 people to start this church plant, with David and I and a lady called Grace Katengi at the time. We were the kind of the 3 core. We had other pastors overseeing it, but we were the 3 core members of the 9-person team to get this church planted and get it going, and kind of responsible for the running of it. The pastors would come in and preach and make sure that everything was okay and was covering, but we were kind of making it happen. But I was convinced that they sent Grace over just to make sure that David and I were going to behave, because she was sensible. She'd been part of the church for a long time. She'd been a leader for a long time. She'd been through the Bible college. So I was convinced that they told her to come over just to make sure that we behaved. But I showed them because I ended up marrying her and she became my wife. So we planted the church in 2015. And then we got married in 2016. In 2016, I finished the HNC in counselling. I knew that I was to go on and do the Christian leadership course that was available at the Bible college I was at. But that would mean having to give up my job as an engineer, which was a relatively well-paying job. Obviously, by this time, I'd given up all the illegal activities, so I was earning money directly. And even here's another thing that I need to share with people: like, God can really clean up a mess. And one of the messes that he cleared up for me was, like, I was in a financial mess. Even though I was earning a decent wage as an engineer and I was earning money in other ways, I would spend it quicker than I would make it. And I would be taking loads of loans out. By the second year of me becoming a Christian, when I started being generous and giving offerings and giving into the church and giving into ministries and not, and actually being a better steward of it, that year I cleared £9,000 of debt. And without really losing any money, it was, I can only call it the supernatural grace that, so even the financial mess I was in, that was getting cleared up. And that got cleared up when money stopped being an idol. Like I stopped working to earn money and started working to bless people, started working to be generous. And when that started happening, things just started changing. But as we got married, like when I was speaking to my wife to be, so like, I really feel called to be a pastor. I feel as if that is the trajectory that I'm heading on. Are you sure you're up for this life? Because it means giving up my job. It means me going to Bible college, and probably for the first few years, you're going to be the main money earner. And she's like, I'm up for it. I'm ready. And I was like, okay, if you're ready, well, let's do it then. But she did say, but if I'm going to be in this with you, we need to get married before you start Bible college. Because I went through Bible college and I'm not doing that as your girlfriend, I'm doing that as your wife. I was like, okay, message heard loud and clear. So I proposed to her on the May of 2016, and we got married in the September of 2016. And then I became the pastor of the church plant at that time. And then during the same time, my pastor at the time, he was the chaplain at Partick Thistle Football Club, which is the other club in Glasgow. Like most people know the big two, but Partick Thistle are the other club in Glasgow. And as my oldest son likes to remind me, he would say they're my favourite club in Glasgow, although historically I'd have picked one of the other two. But I had a great time at Partick Thistle. I was able to take my son along to the games, meet the players, meet the families, really have some good conversations with the players about faith and have time to pray with them. Some of them, when they had kids, I was there to pray with them when the child was born. And some of them were struggling with gambling, struggling with depression. And I was just able to be there and be a witness for Jesus to them and led some of them further into their faith. And but even the others who wouldn't have said they were Christians, they were always welcoming the prayers that they would receive. So that was 2016. I've completed the HNC in counselling, Christian counselling. I went on to become the pastor at the church that we planted in Rutherglen. I'm now married. I've gave up my job to go full time at the Bible college, the chaplain at Partick Thistle. And I like to say that my last year at Partick Thistle as a chaplain, that they had their highest ever finish in the league that they've ever had. Not that it was because I was a chaplain, but I like to let people know that they had the best finish they've ever had in their history when I was a chaplain at the club. Not that being a chaplain is about the results, but it's nice to let people know that. But ministry started getting really busy. I went on to do the diploma at the Christian college, and there was just too much focus was needed at the church, so I had to come away from being a chaplain and focus really on pastoring the church. But we went on to pastor one of our other churches in the West End of Glasgow, and when I went to do that, I was just coming to the end of the diploma in Christian leadership. And my plan and my wife's plan was that I would go back to do engineering and just serve as a pastor. I was doing that voluntary. So I'll go back to engineering, I'd earn a good wage and still have enough time to pastor the flock. But God had different ideas. And our senior pastor at the time asked me to come for a meeting. And I thought it was just to talk about moving on to pastor our church in the West End of Glasgow. But he says, I've got a job offer for you. So, okay. Any idea what it is? He's like, I want you to guess it. I honestly have no clue. Just let me know. So
He's coming. Jesus is.
Life Stories. You can subscribe to our YouTube channel, Life Stories at Lunch, where you can see and hear many more life stories. Don't forget to click the bell so we can notify you when we are live on YouTube.
he asked me to become the assistant dean of the Bible College. Now, just to give you a bit of context of how outrageous that is, like I left school at 16 because they wouldn't let me wear trainers to school. That's how ridiculous my reason for leaving school was. I wasn't allowed to wear running shoes, trainers as we call them in Glasgow, to school. That was really my ridiculous reason for leaving school. So like I couldn't get out of school fast enough. But here I was now going back into education and becoming an assistant dean of a of a relatively large and successful Bible college in Glasgow. That to me is completely outrageous. Then I went on to be the assistant dean to become the acting dean of the college whilst the dean was off maternity leave. And I was there for 3 years working with the SQA, which is the Education Authority in Scotland, helping run different courses and helping countless, like hundreds of people over the 3 years, helping them in leadership courses and counselling courses. And really, like, that was just God. There was no way that I could never have manufactured that. I could never have planned that. But that was the direction God had taken me in. But what it done at that time was, though, it wasn't just that He was putting me into these positions where I was carrying responsibility. It completely changed my perspective on life. Like, I was really bad at relationships, but now, like, even to the point that a couple of years after I became a Christian, and I kind of split with my girlfriend who I was with when I came to Christ, and a couple of kind of bad attempts at relationships as a Christian, I said to God, "Is look, if you want me to be celibate and to be single for the rest of my life, I'm willing, because I have no clue of what I need to do to be a good boyfriend, to be a good husband. So if you want me to be single, I'm okay with that. But if you want me to be married, like, you need to really show me who my wife's going to be." And when it became apparent that Grace and I had feelings for each other, like, I was okay. I was even very hesitant because we were really good friends. But when we knew it was going to be more than that, the first thing we did is we prayed about it. Then we went to our pastors and we asked them, so, look, we know this is going to be more than friends, and we need your support, we need your advice, we need your prayers. But also, if you don't think that this is right, please tell us, because we'll listen. Thankfully, they thought it was of God, and they prayed for us and encouraged it, and they took us through premarital and got married. And still, even though we've moved on to different churches now, like, we're still best of friends. And my pastor then, Craig, he's still very much a man who I value so highly in my life, and still there for me. But that was completely alien thinking. It's a completely new perspective on life. Like, I saw the value in marriage. I saw the value in relationships. I saw the value in having people to give you wise counsel. I saw the value and accountability of having people around you who you're allowed to speak into your life. That was not even close to how I was living my life before I became a Christian. But I started seeing that there was purpose. We all have a purpose in life. There's a reason for us to be breathing in this life. And I truly believe that we will only start to know that when we get to know the God who created us. And that doesn't mean life's going to be easy. like since we've been married, like, we've been blessed with 3 more children. So we have Andrew, AJ, Andrew Jr., who I had already. Then we've got Nathaniel, who's 4. We've got Lily Grace, who's 2, and Sophie Ann, who's 4 months old. So, like, having 4 kids is not easy. Being married 4 kids, but I couldn't think of living a different life. But when I first came to know God and came to the church, I saw all these smiling, happy people. So I just assumed that being a Christian was an easy life. Like, well, if everybody's smiling and full of so much joy, they must have no problems in their life. But I quickly learned that couldn't be further from the truth. That actually life gets really tough, because when you become a Christian, there is an enemy who's got a target on your back, and he knows he can't take your soul, but he wants to destroy the fruit of your life. So, like, we've faced some of the toughest, darkest times together as a couple, but we've faced it together with Jesus. Jesus is at the center of everything that we do. He's the first one we go to. The Bible is our basis for life. We really believe the sufficiency in Scripture is for all life. But we also know that God wants the best for us. So even when we face hard situations, we know that we can face it with Him. And one of my mottos, one of my mantras is, I'm just winging it with Jesus. Like, I can look like I know what I'm doing, but really I'm just winging it with Jesus. I'm just trusting Him and trusting that He knows what's best, trusting that His will be done. And mostly, all the time, things tend to work out. They don't tend to work out always how I imagine them working out, but they always work out. And this past, I think everybody in 2020 had a bit of a tough year when COVID hit. And I don't think it's got any less tough since. But we as a family went through some really hard times. Last year, we lost my nephew, who was only 13 years old. And he died February last year. And he's the same age as my oldest son. And when that happened, just the way that he died, it was, they've still not really worked out the cause of how it happened. And he kind of went into hospital for one thing and never came back out again. And like losing a nephew who was so special, he had a lot of special needs, and he was a larger than life character. But losing him last year.
He's coming. Jesus is coming. I can't wait to hear the trumpet call. He's coming. Jesus is coming. And when He comes, we'll crown Him Lord.